of the whole House and with their family and friends. Order, order. We now come to questions. Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Chris Stevens.
Number 1, Mr Speaker.
With your permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer questions 1 and 23 together. Energy prices are now at their lowest level in 2 years, with the typical bill set to drop by £238 by April. Our cost of living package totals over £104 billion, or £3,700 per household on average, over 2022 to 2025. We're supporting those who need it most, with millions of vulnerable households receiving up to £900 in cost of living payments.
Chris Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Some of us believe in preventative spending, and the House of Commons Library briefing last year estimated that the cost of the National Health Service is £1.4 billion annually on treating illnesses associated with living in cold or damp housing. Which the society costs are considered, that rises to £15.4 billion. So can the Secretary of State confirm whether the introduction of a social energy tariff would cost less than £15.4 billion?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A social tariff means lots of things to different people, but what we are doing is supporting vulnerable people with the cost of our energy bills. So not only did we support them last winter, paying on average a half of everybody's energy bills, we've also been putting in additional payments of £900 to support people. And in addition, since 2010, we've increased the number of homes which are energy efficient and insulated to 50%, up from 14%.
Chris Law. Not here. Virginia Crosbie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On energy tariffs, what assessment has the Minister made of the merits of providing residents who are local to energy and nuclear plants with discounts to their energy bills?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question and for her doughty campaigning for nuclear, our very own atomic kitten. Look, we are very, very positive about nuclear. We've set out plans for the largest expansion of nuclear for 70 years, and we know that overall it's going to be a good thing for people in this country, for their energy bills and for energy security.
Coutinho.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With your permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer question 2, 6, 8, 10 and 13 together. Fuel poverty is devolved, and the latest published figures on the 15th of February 2024 showed that 3.17 million households in England were in fuel poverty in 2023. The Government continues to deliver financial support to low-income homes, vulnerable households through the Warm Home Discount and the cost of living payments.
Coutinho.
Mr Speaker, as I'm sure you're aware, constituents in our area, the cost of living crisis is far from over. The Government's latest energy efficiency policy, the Great British Insulation Scheme, was supposed to insulate 100,000 homes a year, but so far just 3,000 families have been helped in 8 months. Across Lancashire, only 35 homes, and in Blackburn, only 6. Can the Minister explain why at current rates it will take 60 years to meet its 3-year target?
Good question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Energy efficiency is incredibly important to this Government, and in actual fact, we have many schemes that are available. And we have, in fact, the Great British Insulation Scheme, which alone has committed £592 million.
Right, let's go to Paul Blomfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I hear what the Minister has to say about the Great British Insulation Scheme. I mean, it comes after the Green Deal, it comes after the Green Homes Grant, but frankly it looks like another failure. There are 1.4 million people living in South Yorkshire, but just 137 of their homes have been upgraded under the GBIS. Now, my constituents want their bills cut, they want to reduce emissions, they want homes insulated. So what's standing in the way? Is government incompetence? When will the Minister get a grip?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're spending £6 billion this Parliament and a further £6 billion to 2028 on making buildings, including private rented properties, cleaner and warmer. And this is in addition to the estimated £5 billion that will be delivered for the Eco4 and the GB Insulation Scheme up to March 2026.
Fellows.
Over the last 2 years, my constituents in Motherwell and Wishaw as well as disability groups I engage with, have told me harrowing tales of dire fuel poverty and energy debt, whilst energy giants post record profits. Even with the new price cap, National Energy Action estimate there will be 6 million UK households in fuel poverty, with energy debt sitting at £6 billion. After April, the only support available will be the £150 warm home discount, barely increased in a decade. When will the government take meaningful action and finally consult on an energy social tariff? Just millions.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last winter, this government delivered £40 billion for households and for businesses. We also, Mr Speaker, have done the warm home discount, we have the winter fuel payment, and of course we have the disability cost of living payment as well. We are absolutely committed to making sure that affordability is top of our list in terms of energy security.
Ms Twist.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We've seen 14 years of fiasco after fiasco with energy-saving schemes from this government, and frankly, my constituents are fed up of it. In Gateshead, just 7 homes have been upgraded under the government's latest energy efficiency scheme. So, can the Minister say why this is such a disaster and why there is such slow progress?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We continue to drive energy efficiency improvements for low-income and for fuel-poor households, and through schemes including the Energy Company Obligation, the Social Housing Decarbonation Scheme and the Homes Upgrade Grant.
Mr Speaker, a recent report from the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit exposes the government's record on insulation and says the government's false claims about their success mostly involve taking credit for schemes that were a legacy of the last Labour government. And a record low of around 80,000 measures were installed in total under the government's programme in 2022. Isn't it the truth that this government is failing the millions of people in fuel poverty?
Mr Speaker, this government has done unprecedented support for people in this country, and I have constant regular meetings with stakeholders, with charities, with different organisations, and undoubtedly we are making sure that people have support, as I've mentioned, with the warm home discount, with the energy price cap, and with lots of other payments such as a cost of living payment, which is £900 per annum.
Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Talking of fuel poverty, the boiler tax results in consumers paying an extra £150 when they purchase a new boiler. Does the Minister agree it's now time to ditch these unworkable, unaffordable net zero policies and let the British people decide how to heat their homes, what cars to drive and keep more of their own money?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. No decision has been taken on this yet, but we have a commitment to ensuring that we do give the very best deal to all of the people, all of our constituents in this country.
Shut up.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A year ago, the then Energy Secretary said that if suppliers had wrongly installed prepayment meters in any home, they would have to recompense their customers for the way they have behaved. 1 year later, can the Minister tell the House how many individuals who had a prepayment meter wrongfully installed have had compensation, how many are yet to receive compensation, and of those who are still waiting, when will they get the compensation?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And one of the things that we all agree across this House, it was absolutely abhorrent that people had the prepayment meters enforced upon them. In terms of the compensation, we are working our way through this. What I would like to give my assurance, though, Mr Speaker, is that we are doing everything we can to make sure that as prepayment meters are installed, that we're doing exactly the right thing to make sure that everybody is kept safe.
Well, I asked the Minister 3 questions and didn't get an answer to any of them. Perhaps she could put the figures in the House of Commons library, because it seems that at the moment she clearly hasn't a clue as to what the figures are. We have a situation now where over 3 million households are in debt to their energy suppliers, almost 10 million households are living in cold, damp, poorly insulated homes, and as we've heard, the Great British Insulation Scheme is proving to be a great Tory insulation fiasco. So can she tell me, why is the insulation scheme proving to be such a disaster?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we have made great steps to making sure that we do support people. Last winter, as an example, we gave unprecedented support to households and businesses. But I would also like to say to the honourable member that debt, of course, is a major concern. And I have regular meetings with stakeholders to make sure that we're doing the very best to ensure that not only do we get people out of debt, but we also prevent them from getting into debt in the first place.
Question number 3, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and with your permission I will answer question 3, 12, 18 and 24 together. The Civil Nuclear Roadmap reconfirmed the Government's ambition to deploy up to 24 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2050. The roadmap sets out plans to make investment decisions concerning 3 to 7 gigawatts every 5 years between 2030 and 2044.
Kevin Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. New nuclear holds the key to not only creating energy security, but thousands of high-skilled, well-paid jobs in the areas it is located in. Yet too often the planning process can take years, even on sites where there is a long-established nuclear use. Has he discussed with ministerial colleagues what can be done to shorten this process significantly?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. I can confirm that I have had those conversations, and the Government is exploring potential for reducing regulatory burdens for the consenting and licensing of new nuclear power stations without impacting safety, security and environmental protections. The Government is also looking to introduce a range of other streamlining measures, including the Action Plan for Reform, which sets out reforms to the nationally significant infrastructure projects regime.
Trudy Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister for Nuclear confirm that NDA-owned land adjacent to Sellafield will be made available for new nuclear, and more specifically, that enough land would be made available to accommodate 2 470-megawatt Rolls-Royce power stations and their ancillary buildings and spaces?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. What I can confirm is that Moorside is indeed a candidate for new nuclear and one of a number of potential sites that could host civil nuclear projects. Great British Nuclear is currently running a competitive process to select those small modular reactor technologies best able to facilitate the operational projects in the 2030s. That said, the competition needs to run its course, and I know my honourable friend will understand that no decision on sites has yet been taken.
Calvin Carter.
Thank you, Speaker. The UK's first nuclear fusion power plant is due to be built a short 45-minute drive from Lincoln. As well as increasing energy generation and hopefully limiting the amount of agricultural land being used to house solar farms, can my honourable friend update the House with what roles institutions, such as the University of Lincoln, will have in research and training for these types of power plants and their associated advanced jobs of the future?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. It is indeed a very exciting time for fusion in this country, and our Fusion Futures programme will provide up to £55 million over 5 years to train more than 2,200 people, helping meet the demands of our growing fusion sector. This will expand our existing fusion training programmes, working with universities like the University of Lincoln, colleges and employers, providing a pipeline of highly skilled scientists, engineers and technicians at all career levels, from apprentice to post-doctoral fellow.
Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Berkeley has secured an incredibly exciting investment on nuclear innovation with a consortium involving Rolls-Royce and Bristol University. So a low-carbon energy park with international status at Berkeley and next door's Albury go hand in hand as a Seven Edge project. The government's got a really good opportunity to meet the energy security ambitions, but also lead the way. Will my right honourable friend provide assurances that he'll work with Western Gateway on the Seven Edge, although I heard him say that the competition's got to run its course? Will he say that the course will be run ahead of the summer recess?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. She's tempting me. Can I just say that Albury is a candidate for new nuclear and one of a number of potential sites that could host civil nuclear projects. It's very exciting and encouraging to see the number of sites and projects coming forward for investment. As I said, the competition has to run its course and no decision on sites has been made, but it is very encouraging to see such an interest across the country in our great nuclear future.
Andrew Bridge.
Thanks, Speaker. Nuclear power plants come with a huge upfront capital cost. Even small modular reactors have a considerable price tag. So it's important that for once the government gets its procurement right. Does the Minister agree with me that SMR, small modular reactors, offer the possibility for economies of scale where a large number could be commissioned at once, giving potential savings to the taxpayer while at the same time delivering reliable baseload supply to the national grid?
I thank the honourable member for that question, and yes, of course I agree. That's one of the huge benefits, along with many others, of small modular reactors, hence why we are running our down selection programme, hence we are supporting exports from this country across the world so that other countries can join us on our nuclear journey, investing in small modular, advanced modular and gigawatt scale projects over the next few years.
Jim Shannon.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his answers. Minister, when it comes to the delivery of nuclear power stations for Northern Ireland, a decision which I would welcome, but many other parties perhaps in Northern Ireland might have some concerns over. But the one thing we can all agree for in Northern Ireland is to ensure when it comes to manufacturing base, when it comes to procurement, that we in Northern Ireland, as part of this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, can be part of that process. Can the Minister confirm that the people of Northern Ireland will have that opportunity? Thank you.
Not only can I confirm that, but can I just put on record my support to all those companies already operating in Northern Ireland who are integral to the supply chain for our nuclear sector. Our nuclear revival will not only deliver a more secure, robust and clean energy baseload, it will also have the potential to create thousands of new jobs across the country in manufacturing and the supply chain, and I want that to impact positively every corner of our United Kingdom of Great Britain and indeed Northern Ireland.
Shadow Minister Dr Alan White.
Well, contrary to propaganda from the other side, the last Labour government handed over a detailed nuclear development plan up to 2025 with 10 sites identified for nuclear development, early discussions with nuclear developers and a plan for a deep and secure nuclear repository. Since then, over 14 years, not one electron of new nuclear power has been produced. Hinkley C is now at risk of further delays, and no progress at all has been made with the establishment of a secure storage site for nuclear waste. What assurances can the Minister give that lessons have been learnt from this, frankly, fairly lamentable stewardship of the previous plan, and that this latest plan is indeed set up to deliver?
Mr Speaker, I've never been accused of propagandising ever before, and I would like to say that it is a matter of pride for us on these benches that every single nuclear project that has ever been completed in this country has been completed under a Conservative government, and it looks like that's not likely to change anytime soon, despite the protestations and the near Damascene conversion that the front bench might have had to nuclear over the last few years. We're carrying on with our nuclear revival. We've set out our nuclear roadmap. We're encouraging and enthusing and investing in our civil nuclear sector, and I am very excited about the progress that we have made and very excited about what's going to take place in this sector over the next few years.
Greg Smith.
Number 4, sir.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Planning policy priorities is the effective use of land by directing solar projects to locate on previously developed low-grade land and to be designed to avoid, mitigate and, where necessary, compensate for impacts on the best agricultural land.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister was very clear that vast swathes of agricultural land would not be lost to solar on his watch. Yet I am seeing thousands of acres across my constituency being built out or proposed for solar, from Kimberwick to Dinton to Ford to Beachhampton and more, including the latest 2,100-acre abomination in the Claydons known as Rosefield. Land that is good agricultural land, often falsely graded as 3B from taking the readings from the headland, not the field. Land that regularly produces, for example, 10 tonne a hectare wheat harvests. So when will my honourable friend ensure that energy policy is not able to trump food security and stop the mass proliferation of agricultural land for inefficient solar?
I understand the concern and the frustration of my honourable friend and his constituents. On this particular project, it is at the pre-application planning stage. The application is expected to be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate between January and March 2025. However, due to the quasi-judicial role of ministers, as I know he understands in determining planning applications, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on any specific matters in relation to that specific project. What I would reassure him is that all applications are judged on their individual merits, and I would encourage him and all of his constituents affected to engage with the planning process at every stage of that process as it continues.
We're Hobbs.
Mr Speaker, with all due respect to the opposite side, who always very much, and we on our side too, represent the farming industry, farmers are not stupid. They aren't and they won't take high-quality agricultural land out of production.
And it's not happening. So I really worry about the argument that's being made here. We are far behind our renewable targets for solar. So what incentive can the government provide to get more, not less, UK solar off the ground?
Well, I can reassure the Honourable Lady that the Solar Task Force will be publishing its recommendations imminently, and we have an ambitious target of deploying 70 gigawatts of solar by 2035 across the UK.
Graham Bradley.
Much, Mr. Speaker. Residents in Staffordshire Moorlands are very concerned about a number of planning applications for solar farms and battery storage plants on farmland. They have a number of questions, so can I ask my honourable friend, can he ensure that small district councils have the appropriate expertise to be able to look at these applications? Can he make sure that proximity to the national grid is taken into consideration? And where there are a number of applications on adjoining pieces of land, that those applications are considered as a whole rather than looking at them individually?
I thank my right honourable friend for her question, and can I reassure her that we take all of these concerns incredibly seriously, and I'm very happy to meet her and indeed any other Member of Parliament who may have concerns about the plans that are being put forward in their respective constituencies. As I said, it's really important that everybody, from Members of Parliament through to everybody in the community who is affected or has concerns about any plans, to engage with the planning process at every stage, and we will do what we can to address those concerns and indeed whilst meeting our ambitious target of deploying 70 gigawatts of solar by 2035.
Delighted to see you in your place, Mr. Speaker. Some people have short memories. Can I ask the Minister, bearing in mind the difficulties that farmers are facing, particularly farmers with rocky or infertile land, will he have discussions with his colleagues in Deira to ensure that some of that land may well be used in a way that maximises benefit to the farming community as well as contributing to net zero?
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question, and I can assure him that we are already engaging with NFU. Indeed, NFU have been working with the Solar Task Force to enable us to work with farmers and understand the concerns that they have. And I myself am very happy to meet with farming representatives from all parts of the United Kingdom to determine how we can best support them and reach our net zero objectives by the date that we've set ourselves.
Richard Fuller.
Thank you. One of the arguments put forward for a large solar farm in my constituency on agricultural land is that there are limited points of interconnection in the national grid which will accept contracts from large solar farm developers. Could my honourable friend the Minister advise me if that is the case, and could he therefore follow up and advise all members of Parliament where those limitations are?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question. Obviously, I don't know the case in detail, but I'm very happy to meet with him following this session to look at that case in more detail. Despite what I said about the quasi-judicial role of ministers in these planning applications, it's really important that all concerns are addressed and looked at, and indeed that the planning application system is thorough, robust and indeed transparent.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to land use for food production and achieving net zero, has the Minister done an impact assessment on the rising carbon emissions of the UK government carrying on with its agricultural policy, which is reducing the incentives for farmers to produce food? As a consequence, we'll be importing more and more food. We already only have produced 60% of the food that we eat as things stand. If we have to import more and more food, surely that will increase carbon emissions. Has the Minister looked into that and done an impact assessment?
Well, I think the Prime Minister, in attending the National Farmers Union conference just last week, recommitted this government's commitment to supporting British farmers in their primary role of delivering food for the nation. It would be good to see the Liberal Democrats actually give their support to British farmers in as forceful and a manner. We are absolutely determined to do what we can to support British farmers, continue to deliver the food and indeed to deliver the technologies that we need to reach our net zero commitments, which I'm led to believe the Liberal Democrats still support.
Ray Morris.
Question number 5, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The setting of tariffs, including standing charges within the non-domestic market, is a commercial matter for suppliers. Secretary of State and myself have met with suppliers and Ofgem multiple times over the last year to urge them to support businesses and keep bills down. And Ofgem have recently ran a call for input which sought views on standing charges.
May I associate with myself with your earlier remarks, Mr. Speaker, about the sad passing of my dear friend Ronnie Campbell and indeed Lord Cormac. For months now, East Durham Trust in my constituency have been in dispute with their supplier, Total Energies, after they had raised their standing charge, was increased from 40p a day to £20 per day, an increase of over 4,000%. Remarkably, after I made complaints to the department, to Ofgem, to Northern Power Grid and Total Energies, I found out just yesterday that Total Energies have agreed to remotely reconfigure the meter. But can the Minister explain why energy companies and distributors are not seeking to address customer issues sooner? Or does, like me, does she think we have a failing regulator and an energy system that seeks to maximise profit?
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I am pleased to hear from the Honourable Gentleman that this situation has been resolved, and exactly the right recourse to go down, I would suggest, in terms of contacting the relevant parties. What I would say, Mr Speaker, is we are now launching using the Ombudsman to help small businesses as well, so this gives me reassurance that cases like this will be seen quicker and resolved sooner.
SNP spokesperson Dave Dugan.
In the UK, electricity standing charges will balloon by 12%, meaning people in Scotland who were paying £90 a year in 21-22 will soon need to find £216 a year, a 138% increase under this Tory government. This removes the incentive to curb excessive use, while at the same time presents an actual disincentive to people who may wish to economise on energy usage. If these costs and charges were redistributed onto the unit price, consumers would be empowered to pursue reduced usage, knowing that would translate into lower bills. What assessment has the Minister made on savings both to carbon emissions and the need for vast new energy infrastructure if the standing charges were rolled up onto unit prices?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And standing charges, as I mentioned previously, are a matter for Ofgem. However, Ofgem have listened to public sentiment and has recently launched a call for action, a call for input, looking at these standing charges. And so far to date, my understanding is they've had over 40,000 responses. The input closed on January the 19th, 2024, and the paper aimed to gain greater understanding on how these standing charges are applied to energy bills and what alternatives should be considered.
Jones.
Question 7, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I'll take questions 7, 16 and 22 together. The UK has already made tremendous progress securing investment into green technologies. Recent figures indicate the UK saw £60 billion of investment in 2023, meaning that since 2010, the UK has seen £300 billion of public and private investment into low-carbon sectors. Since I took office in September, we've put in place new policies, we've been signing deals with different countries, and the investment has continued to flow, with plans for around £24 billion of new investment in low-carbon sectors announced by the private sector.
Can I thank my right honourable friend for that answer? Harmony Energy, who are a company based in Knaresborough and who in 2022 in Yorkshire, Mr Speaker, opened Europe's largest battery farm, raised the issue of connectivity challenges as a blockage to investment. So I welcomed the Connections Action Plan aiming to cut times by up to 90%. Battery farms, I think, are critical in energy retention and storage and are particularly helpful for renewables. So can I ask my right honourable friend for an update on how that plan is being implemented?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. We set out the most radical reforms to the grid since the 1950s, and as the action plan sets out, we're taking action with Ofgem and network companies to accelerate those really important network connections. Network companies are offering earlier connections to battery storage and generation projects. For example, 10 gigawatts of battery storage projects are already being offered connection dates to the transmission network that are on average 4 years earlier than currently agreed.
Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The UK ceramics sector has invested heavily in energy efficiency technologies and is committed to going further. But many of the alternative green technologies are not yet viable, and there are serious risks that too stringent net zero targets will result in carbon leakage, offshoring in industry and skilled jobs to countries which have a far worse environmental record. So will my right honourable friend look seriously at exempting the ceramics sector from the ETS scheme to give the sector the breathing space it needs to invest?
I thank my honourable friend and I commend his unwavering commitment to advocating for the ceramics sector in his constituency. The UK government remains steadfast in safeguarding sectors deemed at risk of carbon leakage, and I strongly encourage the ceramics sector in his constituency to actively participate in the open consultation which is currently happening concerning free allocation policy.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A new report from the Green Finance Institute and IPPR note that it's a lack of public investment and a lack of strategy that's holding back progress on unlocking private investment, and that the chopping and changing of policy pathways has damaged investor confidence. The Secretary of State likes to say that she has a clear strategy, so will she tell investors what it is? And will she also call on the Chancellor to deliver the scale of public investment we so urgently need to restore investor confidence and lift the UK off the bottom of the G7 league table for private investment where we currently languish?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for that question. I'm surprised that she didn't welcome the recent news that the UK was the first country in the G20 to halve its emissions since the 1990s. I know this is an area which is dear to her heart. In 2023, as I said, the UK saw around £60 billion of low-carbon private and public investment, and the way that we have got to that extraordinary success is by encouraging private investment. So whether it's the Contracts for Difference scheme, whether it's our new policies on capital allowances, or on the supply chain in terms of Green Industries Growth Accelerator, the UK is doing everything it can to attract investment, and that is exactly why we've achieved the achievements that we have.
Kirsten Oswald.
Last week, the Scottish Government announced £24.5 million of public investment into setting up a new cable factory, which will attract a further £350 million of inward investment. I wonder if the Secretary of State agrees that the best way to increase private investment is for the Government to increase public investment to signal that the UK is open to green investment, and thus that the UK Government must invest at least £28 billion a year so that we can maximise private investment and that the level of economic growth from green transition is also maximised.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. As said, our record on net zero investment is incredibly strong. And in fact, I believe the CBI had a report just out this morning showing that our net zero sectors have been growing by 9% in the last year. In terms of further investment, we've set out plans, whether it's on grid connections, whether it's on supply chain investment through our Giga Fund, whether it's on reforming capital allowance, for example, all of those things, and not just public sector investment alone, or the things which attract private investment to this country.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is locked in a doom loop of inertia, and everyone's talking about it. Just this week, the National Infrastructure Commission say government is taking too long, needs to move faster, and greater urgency is required. And the CBI report the Secretary of State mentions says strong future growth from green businesses is being put at risk. Labour's National Wealth Fund will crowd in private investment, create thousands of good jobs for plumbers, engineers, electricians and welders. Is blowing our advantage and losing the race for the industries of the future part of the government's plan, or do they just not have one?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for having the chutzpah to attempt this question. If she would like to talk about uncertainty when it comes to investment plans, she only needs to look at the benches behind her, having performed the most extraordinary flip-flop when it comes to investment plans. We have delivered the second highest cumulative amount of recorded low-carbon investment across Europe over the last 5 years.
Very sure. Barry.
The jump one, number 9. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Advertising Standards Authority, ASA, is responsible for regulating advertising in the UK across traditional forms of media and takes environmental issues very seriously. And I would encourage the honourable member to approach the ASA directly with this request as they operate independently of government.
Barry Sherman.
Thank you for waking me up, Mr. Speaker. The Ad-Free Cities campaign, I think, is a very significant one because in early days, most of us have seen these flashing coloured screens proliferating in our towns and cities, much more densely in other countries like France and Germany. Not only do they use a lot of energy, a lot of electricity, they are very, very invasive of people's dwellings. So can we be very careful about the proliferation of these screens? Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. As I say, the ASA would be the key people to go to. I do know that companies in the sector are
and should be mindful of their net zero obligations, are looking at making commitments to source all their electricity from renewable sources, which is a solid thing, as well as using digital technologies in order to minimise energy usage. But we'd certainly, as we would across all industry sectors, the Net Zero Council is producing roadmaps across the economy to try and encourage businesses to do everything they can to minimise their environmental impacts.
Question 11, Mr Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last month we launched a consultation closing on the 12th of March, which will require petrol stations to report prices within 30 minutes of changes. Pump Watch will enable drivers to make informed decisions on where to buy fuel and reignite competition.
Well, I thank the Minister for her answer, but my constituents in Stafford remain very concerned about the price of fuel, particularly given the pressures on their household budgets. And I welcome that the price at the fuel tank is now lower than it was at the peak. But can I ask, what is the Minister doing to ensure that my constituents do get the best price for their fuel?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're committed to making sure that consumers do get a fair deal, and that is why fuel retailers remain transparent and must not have overcharged drivers. The Pump Watch consultation will require all petrol stations to report prices within 30 minutes of changing, which will enable tech companies to develop new ways for the UK drivers to search for the cheapest fuel.
Report.
In rural communities across Devon, people are feeling the pressure of high fuel costs. The current cost of fuel in towns like Honiton that I represent is almost 20 pence per litre higher than those at petrol stations just 30 miles away. What steps will the government take to ensure fairness and introduce rural duty fuel relief of the sort that we have in some parts of North Devon already?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And as I say, Pump Watch will obviously help with this. However, it's unacceptable for any fuel retailer to overcharge drivers. And that's why the Secretary of State has held a roundtable in December with fuel retailers to make it clear that we expect them to pass on savings to consumers when prices fall.
Helen Morgan.
Please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I pay tribute to the Honourable Friend for her committed work to support her constituents who live in the rural areas. And we have a record of being proud energy efficiency. We are also encouraging, rather than forcing people to make the right choices, and we push back on the ban on gas boilers whilst increasing the boiler upgrade scheme to £7,500 per year, £7,500, one of the most generous grants in Europe.
Hello, Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. There are 1,858 listed properties in North Shropshire, according to the Listed Property Owners Club, and 24 conservation areas across our historic market towns and villages, which means that there are a large number of buildings whose owners find it very difficult to upgrade to make them energy efficient. I wonder if the Minister would be able to tell us what conversations she's had with her colleagues in DLUC and at DCMS to enable people to bring those homes into the 21st century and make them energy efficient.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And again, the Honourable Member makes a very good point. And we do, of course, have those conversations across departments, with local authorities also in rural areas in England are also eligible for grants as well. But I can give my assurance that we do have those cross-government meetings.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many off-grid homes across Cornwall can't convert to energy-efficient heating schemes without incurring huge costs. One option for them is to use hydro-treated vegetable oil. Can the Minister lay out what plans the government have to support those using renewable liquid heating fuels? And will she back the campaign by our excellent candidate for Camborne and Redruth, Conor Donathorne, to axe the tax on HVOs?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I thank the Honourable Member for making this point. And we have, of course, begun developing a consultation on the role of renewable liquid fuels in heat. We expect the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero ministers will receive further information on the detailed shape of this consultation in the coming weeks, with the aim to publish in the summer of 2024.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government plans to publish the second consultation imminently. This will set out a clear direction for how the GB electricity market arrangements will evolve in future to keep electricity bills as low as possible for consumers of all types.
So the two questions my constituents ask me most frequently is when are we going to see cheaper electricity from renewables, And when will areas like mine, which host a lot of renewable production, be able to see local people benefit from cheaper prices for hosting that infrastructure?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. Of course, every day that this government moves from the appalling inheritance of less than 7% of our electricity coming from renewables in 2010 to well over 40% today, every day we add to that, we displace gas and other fossil fuels and lower bills for people, and we're planning to keep that going forward. We already have solar, onshore wind and other developers providing benefits to consumers, and we're also will be coming forward with plans for those hosting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People who are in the process of considering changing their boilers struggle to find accurate information as to what the benefits in terms of the cost is to them. Would the Minister consider issuing new guidance that makes it clear both the costs and the benefits of switching to a heat pump?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. And of course, it can be a complex matter, and that is why the government has committed to looking at rebalancing of the sort of system costs across electricity and gas, and making sure that people can benefit, as I do, from my heat pump, which provides a warm home and low bills.
Alan Smith.
Number 17, sir.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 17 and 20 together. Ofgem's new price cap means that from April the average bill is set to drop by £238. This shows that our plan is working. We've halved inflation and energy prices are now at their lowest level in 2 years. Alongside that, we've taken the number of homes which are well insulated up from 14% in 2010 to 50% now, and we've recently set out plans to help more customers access smarter energy tariffs which could save them up to £900 a year.
Alan Smith.
I'm grateful for the answer, but one of the things that my constituents in Stirling don't understand is electricity standing charges. As we've heard, they have rocketed by 138%, by Ofgem's own figures, from £90.84 in 21 to 22 to in 23 to 24, £216.23. Now, Ofgem has issued a call for evidence, and that's to be welcomed, but Ofgem's clearly not fit for purpose on this. It's high time the UK Government steps in. Would the Minister agree?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman. He's right that Ofgem regulates standing charges. They have issued a call for evidence at the moment. I think about 40,000 people have input, and we look forward to seeing what the results of those are. But I think if he was really worried about the cost of living for families in the country, then the SNP wouldn't have taken taxes in Scotland to the highest level in the UK.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the fall in the energy price cap is certainly welcomed by Carshalton and Wallington residents, as well as the support for households. But many small and medium-sized businesses in my constituency are still struggling to absorb higher costs. So could the Minister outline in a bit more detail the support that small and medium-sized businesses can access to help with energy bills?
Well, I thank my honourable friend and for recently welcoming me to Carshalton and Wallington. Wholesale energy prices have fallen significantly since last winter, but we're committed to supporting businesses with their energy bills. Last winter alone, we delivered around £7.4 billion to support businesses, covering nearly half of the many businesses' wholesale energy costs throughout the Energy Bills Discount Scheme, which we are continuing to support eligible businesses with high energy costs until they can take advantage of lower wholesale prices.
We come to topical. Simon Baines.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, a lot has happened since I was last at the dispatch box. Not only have energy bills fallen to their lowest levels in 2 years, welcome news for families up and down the country, but Britain has become the first major economy to halve our emissions, a huge milestone on our journey to net zero. Our offshore petroleum licensing bill has completed its common stages, and we're supporting the North Sea by protecting 200,000 jobs and using our own gas to heat our homes. I signed a new partnership with Canada on fusion energy, a technology that could give us limitless energy and a technology where Britain is leading the world. We've confirmed the UK's departure from the Energy Charter Treaty, which was holding back our transition to cleaner, cheaper energy. We've launched a consultation on smart energy tariffs, which could see £900 taken off people's bills. And today we host our Hydrogen Investor Forum, announcing 8 successful projects to make low-carbon hydrogen with over £27 million of government support.
Speaker, residents in Ynys, in my constituency of Clwyd South, are alarmed by Innova's plans for the UK's largest lithium-ion battery storage facility near Bersham. Can my right honourable friend give any reassurance about the safety of this technology to my constituents who are very concerned about the dangers of pollution given the noise emitted by such equipment and reports of similar facilities elsewhere exploding, catching fire and emitting toxic fumes?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. Electricity storage allows us to use energy more flexibly and to minimise energy bills. Grid-scale lithium-ion battery energy storage systems, I can assure, are covered by a robust regulatory framework that's principally overseen by the Health and Safety Executive, and planning guidance encourages developers and local authorities to consult relevant fire and rescue services on aspects such as location ahead of any planning decisions being made.
SNP spokesperson Dave Duggan.
23% of households in Scotland are living in extreme fuel poverty, and energy debt across the United Kingdom has reached £3.1 billion. Had the UK Government implemented a social tariff this winter, Age UK estimate that 2.2 million households would have been lifted out of poverty. The latest costs of unpayable energy debt have once again been heaped onto ordinary taxpayers by Ofgem into the unit rate. What assessment has the Secretary of State made of how much energy debt could be reduced by introducing a social tariff to mitigate totally unaffordable energy bills?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. Let me start by saying the fact that energy prices are now at the lowest level in 2 years is good news for families up and down the country. In terms of the support that we have put in place, we have set out a package of over £104 billion to support families. That's £3,700 per household on average, and including we put in place £900 cost of living payments to help people in the last year as well.
Mr. Speaker, for the hospitality sector, energy is a vital purchase which can make up a large part of their overall costs. What steps is she taking to ensure the energy costs faced by pubs, hotels and food businesses do not put them out of business?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for this important question. Wholesale energy prices have fallen compared to last year, and the Government has been supporting eligible businesses locked into high contracts through the Energy Bills Discount Scheme, supporting them until they can take advantage of the lower fixed price rates. My honourable friend will be interested to hear the Government delivered over £7.4 billion to non-domestic energy users last winter, covering around half of many businesses' energy bills.
We now come to the Secretary of State, Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last September, the Energy Secretary claimed she was lifting the onshore wind ban. But in the whole of 2023, and indeed so far in 2024, there have been 0 applications for new onshore wind farms designed for our domestic electricity supply in England. She said her decision would speed up the delivery of projects. Why does she think it hasn't worked?
So let me be clear about our record in onshore wind, which is quadrupled since 2010. In 2010, we had 3.9 gigawatts of onshore wind. We now have 15.4 gigawatts in 2023. We've connected the second highest amount of renewables anywhere in Europe, whereas the Right Honourable Gentleman's plans, which has been widely disclaimed by industry, would deter billions of investment in clean energy.
Ed Miliband.
She didn't answer the question, Mr. Speaker. I'll tell her why, because she has left a uniquely restrictive planning regime in place for onshore wind, and her failure is costing families across this country £180 a year on bills. So we know her policies failed. She could dump the ban at the stroke of a pen. If she's vaguely serious about clean energy, why doesn't she face down the headbangers on her backbenches and just lift the ban?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we've connected the second highest amount of renewable electricity anywhere in Europe since 2010. Our record on renewable energy is clear. But really, Mr. Speaker, this is the most extraordinary deflection that I've seen. In recent weeks, his leader has shredded his policy platform on energy. To be honest, I feel quite sorry for the right honourable gentleman, because thanks to the actions of his leader and his Chancellor, he's been hidden away, his policy's been ripped up, and what is now obvious to absolutely everybody is that Labour has no plan for energy.
John Penrose.
Mr. Speaker, further to my honourable friend from South West Bedfordshire's question about the review of electricity market arrangements, can I welcome the fact that we are at last getting to grips with the clunky old rules that are adding potentially hundreds of pounds to everybody's energy bills? But can I urge the Minister to go faster? This is chugging along at Whitehall speed, and we need urgent action to reduce everyone's energy bills soon.
Go for it. Come on, Graham. Well, I thank my honourable friend for his continuing interest in this. The REMA programme is considering a number of options, for instance, to send more efficient locational signals, which I know my honourable friend is very knowledgeable about. And these options, as I say, include zonal pricing, reform to transmission charging and changes to network access. And the second round of the consultation is imminent.
Graham Morris.
Speaker, this government's treatment of miners, retired miners and their widows is nothing short of a national scandal. This government have been sitting on the recommendations from the Bide Select Committee report since 2021. The report recommended reviewing the mine workers' pension scheme surplus sharing arrangements in favour of miners and their widows. And during this time, thousands of miners have sadly passed away through a legacy of industrial disease, while the government have pocketed £4.8 billion of the miners' own money since 1994. When is the government going to do the right thing and return the miners' money?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The government is doing the right thing, has done the right thing, will continue to do the right thing, coming to a fair settlement between miners and the government and the wider taxpayer. That's what we'll continue to do, and I'm happy to meet the honourable gentleman to discuss this further.
Drew Jones.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this month, the All-Party Group for Infrastructure, which I chair, launched a joint report with the Institution for Civil Engineers on the public behavioural changes needed as we approach and need to achieve our net zero target. I've sent a copy of the report to my honourable friend. As part of its production, we carried out market research, and this highlighted public uncertainty on where to go for accurate information and helping people basically make the choices they need to decarbonise their lives. So what is the department doing to help fill that information gap?
Grateful to my honourable friend for his question. Of course, it has a highly distinguished history in the marketing industry. We agree that it's important the public get the information they need to save money on their bills, as we set out in the Net Zero Growth Plan. And it's why last autumn we relaunched the campaign It All Adds Up, which helped British households save an estimated £120 million last winter. And whether it's Elf on the Shelf or other such routes, we'll find ways of better communicating with the public precisely to allow them to be well informed in doing their bit for net zero.
Toby Perkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Lady from Derby North spoke about the government's approach to differential fuel prices in different towns, but motorists in Chesterfield remain mystified as to why the major supermarkets are charging them more than they're charging customers just a few miles up the road in Sheffield. It's clear the government's approach isn't working. When I wrote to the major supermarkets, they admitted they charge Chesterfield customers more. So will the Minister tell us more about what she is doing to actually ensure consumers in Chesterfield have no reason to be charged more than customers in Sheffield should be paying more?
Well, I'd like to thank the honourable member, and I couldn't agree more that we should not be paying different prices at different petrol stations. That is one of the reasons we've launched the consultation on Pump Watch, and also why we have very regular meetings with the suppliers to make sure that they are not doing this. They shouldn't be doing it, and we're very clear about that.
Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Offshore Energy UK's industry manifesto highlights the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that a homegrown energy transition provides to bring investment and jobs to communities all around the UK. This does require close collaboration between the private and public sectors. Can my honourable friend confirm that the government is absolutely committed to such a partnership?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and I can. What, of course, Mr. Speaker, the sector does not need, as OEUK has itself set out, is the tens of thousands of job losses which would be driven by the right honourable member for Doncaster North's ideological and climate-damaging obsession with ending new UK oil and gas licensing.
Brown.
The last published government estimate for Sizewell C is £20 billion. Hinkley Point C, the supposed prototype for Sizewell C, is now estimated to cost £48 billion. When's the government going to admit the actual cost for Sizewell C will be a colossal £50 billion noose around the bill payers' necks?
Indeed. The SNP, blinded by a misplaced belief in their own exceptionalism, seem almost alone in the world not to recognise the benefits of new nuclear when it comes to reaching our net zero objectives, delivering on our energy security and improving our baseload. 30 countries around the world at COP last year came together to commit to increase nuclear generating capacity by 30%. It would be brilliant if Scotland could be a part of that change, but the SNP and their Luddite partners in the Green Party are holding Scotland back, something that we are determined we are not going to do for the rest of the UK.
Ms Wild.
Mr. Speaker, plans for a new incinerator in Wisbech are strongly opposed by my constituents and those of my right honourable friends for North East Cambridgeshire and South West Norfolk, as they are wholly inappropriate, would mean 300 lorry trips a day, a structure bigger than Ely Cathedral, are near a school and have serious health and environmental concerns. So will my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, visit the site to see for herself why it's completely inappropriate?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. The Secretary of State will indeed be happy to engage with him, and I would indeed be delighted to visit to see the issues that he's raised today.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we had the excellent news that Stellantis announced it will be building electric vans at Luton's Vauxhall plant from 2025, and that's a result of the tireless work of both management and workforce in terms of efficiency and quality. So what plans does the government have to invest in electric vehicle charging infrastructure to help stimulate the EV consumer market?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. She's right to salute the astonishing investments we're seeing across the automotive sector. I'm delighted this government has been able to help bring those about, and we are committed to, as she knows, spreading out more and more charging right across the UK, not least in motorway service areas and others, so that we have the infrastructure to facilitate the decarbonisation of transport alongside all our other initiatives.
Sean McCrawley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was earlier this month that we welcomed the Prime Minister to AMP in Falmouth to meet the workforce and talk about the fantastic submission that they've got for FLOMIS funding to enable the port to support the emerging floating offshore wind sector in the Celtic Sea. Can the Minister reassure my constituents that they are looking at all of these applications with a scrutable eye to ensure that the supply chain can be built up throughout the entire South West?
Friend for the question, I can indeed confirm that the supply chain and the manufacturing jobs that will be created through our investment in floating offshore wind will benefit every community up and down the United Kingdom, and no decision has yet been made on FLOMIS, but will be taken imminently.
Sir Mark Hendrick.
Mr. Speaker, government statistics released last week show that in the North West, 469,000 low-income households live in energy-efficient properties. Hundreds of households in the Fishwick area of Preston are still struggling with cold, damp homes after failed installation of insulation more than a decade ago. Will the Minister commit his department to future fuel poverty schemes that will prioritise the fixing of past mistakes, as well as renewed support for good insulation schemes to be fitted in all the terrace properties around the country?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is already committed to making sure that we have the energy efficiency. We've got the social housing decarbonisation, boiler upgrade scheme, home upgrade, and many other schemes that we're doing. And just to say also that we are, of course, helping all of our constituents with their affordability.
Harrison.
Mr. Speaker, we've made huge progress in decarbonising our electricity sector, but transport and heat is much more tricky to do. So would the Minister for Nuclear encourage our plans in Copeland to harness any power from new nuclear? And would he meet with us so we can discuss those local plans to use that energy to do just that, to decarbonise transport and heat as well as power?
I would be absolutely delighted, as ever, to meet with my honourable friend. Indeed, I have visited her in her Copeland constituency and have seen for myself the huge enthusiasm there is for new nuclear, but also the added benefits from new nuclear and what that can bring to the wider energy sector. So yes, I would be very happy to meet with her and very happy to discuss the opportunities that are opening up for that community and indeed others across the UK.
you, Mr Speaker. Well, the potential loss of 2,800 jobs at Tata Steel in Puttle is devastating for workers and their families, with potential knock-on effects for Trostra Internetly. So, as well as investing in the electric arc furnace, will the government now commit to primary green steel making in the UK to preserve our security and our jobs?
Well, I thank the honourable lady, and of course she should, alongside us, celebrate the £500 million the government is putting in as part of a £1.25 billion investment in renewing that process, putting in the electric arc furnace, modernising production at Port Talbot, and as part of that as well as an additional £100 million between government and industry putting into towards skills, precisely to ensure that there are thousands of jobs for the future and we reduce emissions from that centre.
Mr Speaker, will my right friend reaffirm this government's commitment to 4 operational CCUS clusters by the end of this decade, including Acorn in my constituency? And will my colleagues in the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero also make representations to His Majesty's Treasury to bring forward the financial investment decisions at the soonest opportunity?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and he's absolutely right. CCUS has got such an important role. We are committed to those 4 clusters, and as we announced in March last year, £20 billion of investment to make sure that we carry on doing the transformation and decarbonisation of this country that was so woefully lacking when we took power in 2010.
Sam Torrey.
Mr Speaker, last week the former Prime Minister and Right Honourable Member for South West Norfolk shared a platform with an extremist far-right climate change denying conspiracy theorist called Steve Bannon, who actually claimed manufacturing the crisis of global warming is a man-made thing. So will the Secretary of State condemn these crazy comments and perhaps distance herself from the former Prime Minister?
I thank the honourable gentleman for the question. The thing that I would say that he should look at very carefully is that the UK is the first country in the G20 to halve emissions. If you want to look at our record, you should look at that. And I think it's absolutely extraordinary that no one on the opposite benches has welcomed that news today.
Matt Walden.
Speaker, National Grid's Grimsby to Walpole project will see pylons driven across Lincolnshire's beautiful landscapes and will take major chunks of some of this country's best agricultural land out of production. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it is vital that residents respond to the consultation that is currently going on, and that it is right that National Grid be told to take into consideration food security as well as energy security when they consider these applications?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As you know, I can't comment on a specific proposal, but I would say we need to rewire this country in order to have homegrown energy, and that does mean hosting new infrastructure, and the presumption is that that should be above ground, and it should be done in a way that minimises any negative impact on food security, and I'm confident that any proposals that come forward will do so. But let's make no mistake, we must rewire this country. We must power this country more from this country. We clean up our energy and reduce our dependence on foreign fossil fuels.
Mr Speaker, every single winter the village of Altnahara in Sutherland is the coldest community in the whole of the United Kingdom. Some parts of the United Kingdom are colder than others. That's geography for you. Can I ask that this fact be taken into consideration in the future when the government looks at schemes to help people with the cost of paying their electricity bills?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for his question. And as he will know, the government has delivered over £40 billion in support last winter. And also the government expects the warm home discount to support around 3 million households this winter, with the final figures to be published later. And since 2011, the warm home discount has delivered over £3.5 billion in support for eligible low-income households.
Can I welcome the news that Ofgem have put the price cap down by 12%, which is going to be about a £20 discount on every average home. There is one problem, though. The standing charge is still relatively high within that. I know there's an open consultation, but would the government consider putting on bills transparency around the standing charge so that the public understand exactly what that standing charge does?
I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. And clearly it's absolutely vital that we have had the call for input on the standing charges, and we await with anticipation how we will react to the over 40,000 responses that we have so far had.
Final question, Imran Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've recently been inundated with cases where the collapse of SSB Law, a legal firm that took thousands of defective cavity wall insulation cases to court. This has left constituents with tens of thousands of pounds in costs they cannot afford during an unprecedented cost of living crisis. Can the Minister assure me that the Government has a plan to address this scandal and what compensation my constituents will be offered to remove faulty wall cavity insulation so that they can finally be free of its devastating consequences?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, it's always awful when we hear of these cases. And I would very much appreciate a write to the gentleman on this particular issue.
We now come to, that finishes questions, we come to the urgent question. I'll let the front bench change over. We now come to the urgent question.